We all know gas prices are out of control. Or are they? A congressional committee has made a shocking charge that prices are actually being controlled by the Obama administration, kept artificially high intentionally to force Americans to use more alternative energy sources. Joining me from Capitol Hill is the chairman of the committee that issued this report, Congressman Darrell Issa. Congressman, welcome. And boy, this is going to be an interesting conversation. So do I understand it? You think the Obama administration wants gas prices to go up?
Well, Elliot, as you probably know, Secretary Chu said that we needed European oil prices in order to affect the kind of change that he wanted to have. Additionally, the president said when he was campaigning for cap and trade that there would be huge increases that would be necessary and that upheaval would be part of it. Now, he didn't get cap and trade, but he is pursuing policies, both fiscal policies and financial policies, but also policies at the EPA and other agencies that are leading to a reduction in domestic production, an increase in imports, and higher prices. Now, having said that, we're not looking at a vast conspiracy. We're looking at policy mistakes that are inevitably going to lead to higher prices. And policy right-doing may not reduce dramatically the cost, but it certainly will, over time, make it not rise and get it back down. Now, one policy that is not in our study, and there's over 200 footnotes in the study, one policy which is temporary is quantitative easing. There's no question, everyone knows that commodity prices are temporarily artificially high because they've been a flight to quality that returns better than, quite frankly, T-bills. That's temporary, but most of the problems are we have the ability to raise domestic production, which raises jobs and helps keep world prices lower. We're not doing it, and that's a policy mistake.
Congressman, you've said a lot of things in there. One thing I just got to respond to, I wrote a lot of articles, law review articles. In fact, having a lot of footnotes doesn't mean you're right. Trust me on that one. But I want to come back to something that's critically important.
But, Elliot, it means that we want you to look at the footnotes. We gave you the study. We think the study speaks for itself.
Okay, but I want to come back to two very different issues. There's no question that Secretary of Energy Chu at one point did say, look, if we had higher energy prices, people would use less of it, and maybe that would have some desirable policy impact. That's a very different thing, though, from saying that the White House and President Obama have intentionally been pursuing some of the policies we'll talk about in a minute in order to raise prices. Very different thing. Are you saying they've intentionally been seeking to raise prices, and that's why they have not expanded some of the domestic energy as much as they could have?
Elliot, what our study says is their policies are going to inevitably raise prices and lessen American jobs. And our primary concern on the committee is American jobs. We want that $400 billion worth of oil jobs to be in the U.S., not elsewhere. At the same time, these policies are clearly raising prices because the futures market is reacting to a 250,000 barrel a day drop predicted in the Gulf for the next several years. Those are policy decisions that are affecting the price. Don't get me wrong. World prices matter. We're not claiming that you're going to lower prices precipitously overnight. What we are saying in this study is policy does matter. The policy being pursued in a number of areas, including some of EPA and other groups' actions, are in fact giving Americans higher gas price and, oh, by the way, higher energy prices are on all levels.
Okay, but Congressman, you're saying something there very differently. Of course, policy is going to have an impact on price, and with enough time we can get into the policies and we can discuss whether they're good or bad. But let me read to you from the introduction to your report, or it's a quote from the report. I don't know if it's the introduction. Yes. You say this, and you're referring to the policies, can be seen as nothing less than a concerted campaign to raise the price of energy as a means to force the issue. In other words, you're saying they intend to do it. The intent, and I know intent is a tough thing to prove sometimes, but you're saying they intended for the prices to go up. If you want to change that, that's fine, but that's what you said in your report. Do you believe that?
We're not backing away from the report. We find inevitable proof, if you will, that these policies can only have any reasonable person believe they're going to lead to higher prices. You know, EPA had chose to literally break with tradition and pull an already existing permit simply because they wanted to relook at it. It happened to be in coal, but it was uncalled for and historically very different to undo a contract already made. There are a myriad of policy decisions being made across the board. We see them, we annotate them, we show the American people, and yes, we reach a conclusion that this policy must be considered as part of a concerted effort to raise prices. Now, you can make a decision that it's not, that they simply want to have this policy, and incidentally, price raises are just an accident, but we can't be blaming oil companies, and we can't be blaming everybody in a vacuum if we don't look at the actual policy. More important, Elliot, we are looking at those very high-paying oil jobs that are being lost here and put in Brazil and put in Cuba and put in other places where we're going to buy the oil from, and that's very disconcerting.
Look, Congressman, as I said, we could have a long and fascinating, I think, conversation about energy policy, but I want to ask you point blank, what proof do you have that they have enacted policies because intending, desiring that those policies will lead to an escalation in price? What is the email, the conversation, the memo, the statement made saying we want to limit the number of leases because that will drive up the price of oil?
What we're showing is a pattern of behavior and a set of quotes made by this administration, including the president, and the attempt to pass cap and trade, which clearly was going to raise the cost of carbon dramatically. They didn't get their policy in the sense of legislation. They're doing these things. It's raising prices. If they want to show that they're not intentionally do it, then don't come before our committee, as EPA did and Mineral Management's new entity and BLM, and tell us, oh, no, we have more leases and we're doing all this. They're not. The fact is they're claiming they're doing more leasing and they're being more productive and everything's rosy, and they're doing this under oath. Well, in fact, every prediction is that the only place that we have a growth in domestic production is on private land and existing operations that are simply doing better. But, Elliot, you can reach your own conclusion. Read the report.
Do it to you. I hate to do it. I promise. We'll have you back. We'll continue this. It's fascinating. It's important. I disagree with you. I don't think you've given us a shred of evidence about intent. But, look, I want to continue the conversation.
Read the report. It's online, Elliot.
Well, I have been. All right. Congressman Darrell Issa, thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome.
Up next.